5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
Good evening, or good afternoon, I should say. It's afternoon, evening, one of the two, whichever. Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome along to the Crossroads Motel, for those of you that remember it, because, I'm asking, is this club turning into a bit of soap opera here? And if we are the Crossroads Motel, well, of course, then I am the suave General Manager Adam Chance, and I'm joined by Benny.
I don't know who that is. Should I be insulted by that, Chris?
No, not at all, not at all. Just don't bother googling it. It was lovely.
Okay.
You will now. I did say it's soap opera there. What is it with this club? First of all, we just like. And I'm going to say hi to Craig, he's in, by the way. Nothing is ever sort of just simple. Will we ever just have a normal season?
No, we won't. And it always seems to happen just before the international break, doesn't it? You know, there's some sort of news that comes out. And this is the next line of the conveyor belt, I would say. Look.
She's gone. Some of the fan sites, I mean, I'll read this one here. This is Foxes of Leicester. Leicester fans rejoice as Chief Executive leaves club. Who's next to go? Are fans rejoicing? Because, I mean, look, I think we'd be rejoicing if somebody else went. Mm-hmm. But I have had to say, she has, in fairness, overseen probably the best period of, in our history, with what we've won and where we've played and what have you. But then again, you've got to look at the downside. Simple things like sending the accounts off late when she knows the deadline. I think there's more, not only more to this, but I think there's more will happen over the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting that we got a Percy article out this morning, followed by the removal of a CEO in regards to that aspect, because it always seems to come in twos with that, doesn't it? We get some information and then something else gets announced. Yes. I agree. I think that in the last 15 years, you can point to her as a potential success. The revenue of the club has increased significantly since her involvement in the club. She oversaw the Fofana and Maguire deal. And I think overall she's done an okay job. There are issues, we've mentioned previously about betting sponsorships on the shirt and all these other bits and pieces that gets fans riled up. But I think overall she's done a decent job. And you are right. I think if it was somebody else that was leaving today, the reaction would be a lot more positive. So I don't think there are many that are rejoicing. I think a lot of people are saying maybe the wrong one's leaving.
Yes, yeah. Just to basically touch on the sponsorship, because that was something I was going to be possibly doing a show on next week, but 9 games into the new season, and we still haven't got a sponsor. And this is devaluing the sponsorship the longer it goes on. Why? And I don't think we should put King Power on there, because obviously King Power now is a separate entity. And if we give it them free now, then they're not going to ever come back and pay for anything. But why not stick Loros or another charity on there? It just looks, every time you see us play, and yet, all right, people will say it's nice not to have a sponsor on, but we need the money. But until we get somebody, at least put something else on there.
So as I mentioned to you before we come on there, and I put on Twitter as well, there is a lot of tension behind the scenes in regards to the betting sponsor in the summer that we seem to have got out of the contract for. Not sure whether or not we paid to get out of the contract after it was announced because of the backlash from the fans. But it shows that the struggle to find a separate sponsor that will give us anywhere near the same amount of money as what the original one was worth. It just shows that the landscape has changed entirely for a championship club compared to a Premier League club. I don't think we'd have a struggle if we were in the Premier League with a new sponsor. The issue is it's such a huge revenue source. When we had, is it FBS?
FBS.
Yes, they were like 20 million a season for the shirt sponsor. BC Games was about sort of 15-20 million pounds again over a couple of seasons or something like that.
Well, it was only one season, wasn't it, with BC Games?
Yes, it was, but it was a significant amount of money invested. I think it was FBS that went from the front of shirt to the training wear sponsorship because of the relegation. So you can imagine that the front of shirt sponsor for Leicester would be roughly in the maybe £10 million there or thereabouts. So giving it to a Loros who isn't going to pay anything, and we all know PSR has issues, and not having that money come in as pure profit effectively is a significant issue. And I think that's why we probably saw certain players leave in the summer, because we didn't have that revenue coming in from the shirt sponsors. So it's unfortunate really that KBet and the falling of that deal has resulted in potentially somebody being sort of jumped before they pushed, because from what I've heard, there was tension behind the scenes, and this has been a conversation that's been happening for the last sort of 3 or 4 months behind the scenes. And at this point, it's a case of, well, if I leave before I get pushed, at least I leave with my dignity, and that sort of situation.
Sky have put this up earlier. Tensions between Whelan and Rudkin. Susan Whelan was Vichai's closest ally as Leicester City masterminded one of the biggest sporting underdog achievements ever. She spent 15 years at the club, having been brought across by Kun Vichai from his King Power duty-free empire. And while she had no experience of working in football before that move, she oversaw a period of unprecedented success in the history of the club. Working closely with sporting director John Rudkin, she appointed Claudia Ranieri to the role of manager, which, all right, that worked out, but it could have gone either way, which proved to be inspirational. The recent relegation and downturn in performance have, however, undermined the confidence of some Leicester fans in how the club is being run. Key to Whelan's departure, Sky Sports understands, is the increasing tension between Rudkin and Whelan in recent times, and sources have told us that relationships became untenable more recently, and that it was inevitable that one of them would have to relinquish their post. Many Leicester supporters have now called for change at the top, with much of the anger directed at Rudkin, but Whelan's departure will placate some. It's not yet clear whether Whelan will return to a role with King Power and wider business interests. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Rudkin is untouchable.
It seems that way. I think the tensions behind the scenes that has been ongoing for the last 3 years. There was a power struggle, and it would seem that Rudkin has come out on top. And that means that, and I tweeted this earlier on. Look, there's no way that John Rudkin leaves this club whilst Top is in charge. So at this point, he is untouchable. He's not going to be dropped. He's not going to be fired. This solidifies his sort of at the club.
Which, speaking as a fan, I don't think anybody should be untouchable apart from the owner. And look, I know he has stood by top, and he's helped him through a really bad period in his life when he needed that support because his mind was elsewhere. And then, of course, with the COVID as well. But if he is ahead of this big business empire that he's supposed to be, he's got to be looking at these decisions and separating what is good for the company and what is good personally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there is that grey area, isn't there, between being a friend. Like, I get along really well with my boss, but at the end of the day at work, if I make a mistake, I expect to be called out on it. But after that, you can still be friends and, go out for dinner and stuff, So, and also Rudkin has a bigger say in the horse horse racing industry at King Power as well, and other bits and pieces. So that grey area between sort of friends and business partners or working for boss or whatever, you're all right. Like, if you've not done a good job, and the last 3 years have shown that he hasn't done a good job, especially when you think of the fact that our wage to turnover ratio at one point was 125%. If you're spending 25% more than you bring into a club because of wages, then that's not a sustainable model at all.
No.
You shouldn't be untouchable. You should be able to say at the end of the day, look, maybe it's time for us to separate from the football, maybe move you across somewhere else and somebody else takes the director of football role. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up CEO himself and then somebody else comes in. But because this is Leicester City, but I do think it screams more to me that I mentioned in the summer that maybe we're angling to sell the club next season. I think this screams that we're not selling the club, and we're going to carry on as we are.
Well, actually, because that was going to be one of my later on questions, but let's deal with it now then, because I wondered personally whether this was the beginning of the end of not to say King Power, because he's well, I'm sure he still has a very big say in King Power behind the scenes. I'm sure it was all political what he stood down. But and I was just wondering whether this was getting the club ready for a sale by getting, rid of the people at the top, if you like.
So I'm not entirely sure, because I think if you were to sell the club, the person that you'd want by your side is Susan Whelan over John Rudkin, right? Because she has the expertise in that sort of aspect. She knows the finances of the club better than anybody else. So you remove her, you sort of remove a bit of confidence in regards to the sale to anybody else. I personally think that with Top taking more of an interest day to day by the look, because he's taken over the temporary control of CEO of at the moment, because he's got nothing else to do since he was removed as CEO as King Power, that he maybe wants a more sort of hands-on day-to-day running of the club, and that personal bond with the tragedy that we had several years ago with the passing of Vichai. I think he wants to get the club into a better position before he even considers it. So I think he stays for a bit longer.
Carry on talking for 1 second.
No worries. So yeah, overall, I think that Susan has done a decent job overall with the revenue at the club. But as Chris mentioned before, there are issues in regards to the accounting period, the PSR, the dodgy betting sponsorships. I know that she was involved with the planning and the sort of potential starting of construction with the stadium. That, from what I've heard, there's been little whispers in the background that said that she was very difficult to deal with on that sense as well. So maybe that's another reason that it's not gone well. Taking away all these little things that I say little things because they're not, are they? Failing PSR isn't a little thing, but there's only so much you can do as a club to increase your revenue when you're not a top 6 team. You can't go to America every season and boost your revenue. You can't go to the Middle East. You got Thailand, that's fair enough, but that's only a small market compared to Real Madrid, Manchester United, Barcelona, these big elite clubs that make money. And we're in the pecking order. We're in that pyramid. We're not in the top echelons. We're not even in the second echelons of revenue for a football club. We're in the top sort of 3 of the section, but there's only so much money you can bring in without a bigger stadium, a bigger TV revenue for Champions League football and stuff like that.
But I understand why that has taken the back step because obviously it was all going ahead and then we got relegated the first time, and you don't want to do that when you're in the second tier. But going back to the betting, because surely it was Susan Whelan's job to get the best deal that she can for the club. Now, I know the fans didn't like some of what, say, as you could say, dodgy companies. And look, with BC Game, we had all the Giacomo thing where were they being banned and all that. But if they're offering the best deal, and look, we know next season we can't go betting on the shirts anyway, which I think is a typical EFL Premier League two-faced, hypocritical decision when the whole thing's being sponsored by Sky Bet. And you look around the ground and there's things everywhere for betting. I think it's just pathetic, to be honest with you. It's like you can't have cigarette advertising on, but it's the Embassy Championship.
So I think, to come back on that, the reason why I think Sky Bet is okay as the Championship sponsor is because that's a regulated British company, or Irish company, I guess, but they are well regulated and they work under the Gambling Association in the UK. The reason why Leicester got their collars felt last season from the Gambling Commission is because BT Games weren't a regulated company in the UK, so they weren't legally allowed to be put on the shirt because of that. And like, the thing is, yes, with smoking you get cancer, with drinking you have liver failure, but with gambling, like, you can stop with those things and get better. I don't think I've ever met a gambling addict that doesn't think about gambling 24/7, that hasn't potentially put on a bet and wasted all of their, like, the rent money on alcohol. My dad's an alcoholic, and he'll admit that himself, but he still paid the rent. He still, paid the mortgage. He still, the gas was still there. The electric was still there. When it comes to gambling, it's all they think about, and they will, and it ruins people's lives a lot more than alcohol. And alcohol affects your life more than anything, but gambling can affect everyone around you. And if it's not a legal betting company, because again, like, I know you've had betting sponsors in the past, no issues with that. I think, if you can get that money, get the money, as long as it's regulated, and that's fine. But if you're going to a company that isn't registered, isn't legal in this country, and has been thrown out in the country that they were set up originally, then that's not a good, even if they're paying £20 million. I wouldn't want, and this is just, I wouldn't want Adolf Hitler's face on the front of the shirt if he gave us £50 million a season. It's not the same, but you know what I mean. It's
that name is now going to be linked on this video underneath, thanks to Google algorithms. Could have been worse, I guess. There are other ones that could have been worse. I know what you're saying, and look, it was very, very dodgy. But I think the companies concerned weren't actually attracted or going for the UK market anyway, because you couldn't bet if you were, if you came up as a UK company. They wanted the Far East and the Asian markets, and of course, obviously, we've got a very big Asian population in Leicester.
But that was quite a lot of those Asian markets are for money laundering. The reason why K-Bet was an issue this season, and I had a hand in the article that came out originally with Philippe Auclair. I gave him information and did a lot of research into it myself. The fact that they were going to be our shirt sponsor when they'd only set up a website 6 weeks prior, and then on the same day, I think it was the 6th of June, they had updated the internet with like 56 different profiles, one like BibleReading.com and Pinterest and TikTok, and all on the same day, to try and have a footprint online. Now that screams money laundering. If you're setting up a company to pay money to this club, to then get money through the door because of that, and that's the issue. It's I don't have a problem with gambling. If you want to gamble, go ahead and gamble. That's not for me to say. I've opened FIFA packs, which is effectively the same thing, with money. So, but I think it has to be regulated. If it's not regulated in this country, then it's a slippery slope.
Oh, totally agree. And thanks for sharing that with us. I didn't realize that, but yeah, I agree with you. But you've just, again, I'm just going back then, obviously, to Susan Whelan. Surely, rather than have nobody on there, if we only get 5 million for a season, let's get Mr. Patel's chippy from Ayleston on the front. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I agree. Yeah, I
like
think
or whatever it is.
yeah, there should be, a company that came in with us. We don't know the ins and outs in regards to was there multiple offers for the sponsorship, because that's another thing. We don't know if there was just one and that's it. There was nobody else. Whereas, if somebody came in now and said, "Look, we'll give you £4 million for the summer for the season," I think the club would say, "Okay, fair enough. It's 4 million that we didn't have previously." And the longer it goes on, you're looking at less and less money, because you're then effectively not on the shirt for as long as you need to be. And already they've sold a lot of shirts with no sponsorship on the front, so they're not going to get. Because I don't imagine there's going to be many fans that think I'm going to walk into the King Power and say, "Can you just print that sponsor on my shirt for me, please?" Because I agree, I don't think the shirt looks right. I think all of them look a bit strange without anything on the front. But then I guess that we're sort of we've been. We know that the shirt sponsors are on the front of shirts, and we all think it looks weird. We've been sort of pushed to be like, "Oh, it's okay to have a shirt sponsor. It makes the shirt look okay." Whereas when there isn't one, you're like, "That looks really strange." So yeah, I agree.
For me was when I don't know why I got it through, but it was last season's away. The one with all the different colours, black with all the different colours, and somehow that came through with no sponsorship on, and I don't know how. Maybe just because I'd ordered it early. And every time I wore it, I thought, no, it doesn't look right, because. But now this season, I'm actually liking it. The fact that there's not, but it does obviously, like you say, hurt the club. So do you think?
I also think, just really quickly, I think that if King Power were in a better financial situation, we would have King Power on the front now. I think if they could offer £4 million, the club would say, "Yeah, just do it." But unfortunately, he's not in charge of King Power anymore, and they don't have the money to do that for the men's side.
No, they do it for the training, obviously. So that's obviously a small...
And the women's as well.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. I mean, do you think? I mean, you touched on this before. Do you think if she hadn't gone now, if she hadn't jumped, so to speak, that she would have actually been pushed?
I think so, because as Sky said, and also Rob Tanner has tweeted out as well, there were ongoing tensions that had only got worse. I heard a story that if they saw each other in the corridor, one of them would turn around and walk away. That's how bad it became. The fact they hadn't had a word said between them for 3 years in a football club that had just been relegated, it's not a good thing. So I think Top made his decision, and I think because it also said online that it was a mutual thing. So that says to me that she's gone, "Look, I'll just go," and they went, "Okay, fine." Or it was a case of, "We're going to let you go. Shall we just agree that you just, you leave mutually? We all save face. Everyone looks fine. You can move on to a different job in the Premier League if you need to, or wherever. And, we'll give you a glowing CV." The golden handshake as such, where you're like, "Look, we won't say anything negative against each other. Just off you go." But I do think she would.
Here's a few million just to keep you sweet as well.
Exactly. But I do think she would have been pushed at some point.
Yes. And now that she's gone, and again, this is something you touched on before, you mentioned Steve Rudkin probably got his eye now on the CEO's job.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. If he was to take over that, and not saying that I would be totally against that, if he was to give up his director of football role.
Yeah.
Or do you? Surely the whole thing is too much for one person.
It would be. I don't think he can be in charge of the academy, the director of football, and the CEO to try and bring money into the club as well. Yeah. Look, I think it's an open goal for Top really to have removed Rudkin over Whelan. I think a lot of fans would have been like, "Great, we're back. Let's give him all the praise in the world." But I guess if you move into the side where he's less of a prominent figure in transfers and wage negotiation, and we don't see him pretty much every other game sat in the stands, either with Top or by himself, I think the fans would be slightly better off. I think they wouldn't be as angry, especially if they bring in a director of football that knows what he's doing with an actual plan. So time will tell, I guess, if he does get moved across. But as I said earlier on, I don't think he's going anywhere in the sense of Leicester City. I think he stays there as long as Klopp does, and that for me is a damning indictment of the club at the moment.
It is. You know, as well, that would also not ruin. Look, Top obviously puts a lot of store by John, you know, and John was there. It was his rock, as Princess Diana once said. Now, there's two people that's going to be linked in the show you wouldn't put together. You know, she had her rock in whatever, you know, the butler was called. John was obviously his rock, and I get that. And when these things happen, and in such tragic circumstances, you know, you need your circle of friends there, you know, for you. And I suppose Top, you know, if he's in the position of, I physically can't, after everything he's done for me, even though I'm head of the, you know, this company and what have you, I just can't do that. But if he was to move him over, because potentially the CEO is a bigger job than the director of football.
Yeah, I agree. I think a sideways move would be better because then you're not, you know, sacking the person that was there for you and you know, losing that sort of potential friendship or respect from that person. And look, you know, we've seen it all over world football and in the world of business where people have had a promotion that was just a sideways move, you know, all sort of dressed up as a promotion. Look at Nathan Dyer when he signed for us. That is the greatest ever sideways move I've ever seen in my life because he won the Premier League that season, you know, so it can work. But I think if he was to move across and he was less prominent, I think the fans would be a lot happier. You know?
Yeah. Just as long as he doesn't have anything to do with the football side, and he even might get accounts in on time. Who knows? But
well, there is that. Yes,
you know. And again, I said this, and we touched on it earlier, but to go into it again, Top. Do you think it? You know, I mean, we've now got an owner who the money that he's putting in is his own money, not a huge conglomerate's money. So that's going to be a lot more limited now because it's his own personal wealth, and not, you know, football clubs eat into your money like, you know, more than the taxman does. And you know, we're seeing again just recently, Kieran Maguire put out about us taking more loans out. Although looking at it, it looks like it's loans to cover. Look, we know we get 8 million, let's say, for McAteer. We know that 8 million is not up front. You know, it is in parts. Like I say, is it the beginning of the end? With
possibly.
Top?
So with the Kieran Maguire stuff, so usually the money comes because we've done it for the last 4 or 5 years where we've taken money out and against these transfers, and then they use that to pay for the day-to-day running of the club rather than reinvesting it in the squad, which I'm a little bit critical about because, you know, that money coming in would help you improve the squad. So that is a no change for me, to be honest. I expected that to happen, and it has happened, like we've done with the parachute payments as well. I do think that the Top has come to the end of the road for a lot of fans. There's not a lot that he could do now to change that around. I think the goodwill still stands for the family because of what his dad did for us, and we were a better run club under Vichai because he was more of a strong leader. If he didn't like something, he'd stop it. You know, we sacked Ranieri because he thought we were going down. So, you know, and it takes a strong person to sack somebody that's just won you the Premier League. I think Rodgers would have gone a lot earlier if Vichai was here over Top. There was that loyalty to Rodgers at the time because the FA Cup win. The club isn't the same as it was 5 years ago. We all know that 2 relegations in 3 years puts a massive strain on finances and PSR and fans as well. Because I know people that had season tickets for the last 10, 15 years that haven't renewed now because of how the club has been ran. I think there are some that will back him to the hilt because of what his dad achieved, but a lot of fans, and I would say myself included, think that maybe a clean break is better for everybody because at least that way we get a part of our club back. The issue there is that who do you sell it to? And, nobody is going to be whiter than white in the sense of who you sell the club to, because, billionaires aren't exactly the most ethical people in the world. That's for sure. They're billionaires for a reason.
Yes.
But we're still hamstrung by what we can spend because of the revenue coming in. So, I think we limp on with Top at the helm for at least another couple of years. If we get promoted and then get relegated again, I dread to think where we're going to be. But look, right now, I think there's been a lot of water under the bridge, and at some point he needs to accept that maybe he can't turn it around. If he thinks this is the way to stem the tide and divert from the iceberg, I'm not sure how much turning he's going to get out of that ship.
No. Not especially with John Rudkin at the wheel.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. I mean, of course, there is a spare Arab out there, the Arab that was supposed to be going after Bristol City, that apparently is not now. So, Top, if you're listening, I just wonder whether we have now come full circle, because prior to, well, even under Mandrich, and look, I know some people don't like Mandrich. I think he saved us, if you like. We could have. It'd been a lot worse if he hadn't come in, and well done to the Birch for getting him on, getting him interested. It didn't go right first, straight off, but he eventually sold us to King Power. But before where we were before King Power took over, are we going all the way back to that, where we're going to be a middle of the championship table, flirting with relegation season after season? Changing managers, which we are doing anyway quite regularly?
I wouldn't say so, because the reason being is that we've clearly put a lot of money into the academy. If you read, there was another article in the Daily Mail today or yesterday about the academy at Leicester City and how it's sort of stolen a march on several clubs around the country because of what they've done in regard to investing in youth around the country itself, and especially in Leicestershire. We're seeing the fruits of that now, that if you have proper facilities that are accessible to everybody at the club, there's no, this is the men's squad only, you can't do these things. They have their own gym. They can go into the cryo, the cold plunge effectively, or the big cage with ice all around it, hot plunges, all that. They have access to all of that. They've got 14 pitches that they can play on, so they're not going to be sort of tied down and say you can't play because the weather's not good enough, etc. So I think that is where we make the most money, and I think we will still be around the top end of the championship for a long time, if not promoted to the Premier League, because of the fact that we've put money into that. And I think that will be the lasting legacy of the Vichai and Top era, is the fact we've built that training ground. And whilst it's been open for a few years, it's still state of the art and probably the best in the UK still. And it has a lot of, one of the reasons why we lose a lot of the younger lads is because they'd go to Liverpool and Chelsea and Man U and say, look at the facilities we've got here. They're world class. Yeah. You don't need that now. You can get them in Leicester.
Yes.
So I don't know if we'll be flirting. I don't think we've gone full circle and flirting with relegation again. I think that, whilst there's still money there, because there is, we'll still have plenty of money to spend in the summer when we sell Abdul. As much as I don't want to admit we're probably going to sell Abdul, we probably will. We'll sell Monger at some point and make a lot of money from that as well. Maybe even Louis Page and Nelson. These players that come through the academy, that play for us for a number of years, and when they are too good to play for us, they move on to bigger clubs, and that will be reinvested. It's the big thing now is it going to be reinvested into the playing squad that gives us an opportunity, and will we back a manager through the bad times and the good to get us to that point? Because if you keep changing a manager, you keep changing the style of football, the players that he's interested in, and that's never a success for anybody.
Never successful. Look at Watford,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, apparently, just very quickly, if we go, they're going to get rid of now. I don't know if you've read this. When you're smiling, when we come out on the pitch, and they're going to play this every time the players walk out. Oh dear, EastEnders, if you're wondering. Only because I got that.
We have an agreement at Leicester Till I Die TV, is that whenever you make a joke now, we just stand here all just silently, just like
Oh, do you? You do? Is that what you're doing, is it? Right, to make a note of that. But look, brilliant. I know you've got to go because you've got other shows coming up tonight. You're a busy night. Thank you for spending the time of coming on, mate. And I will probably, I'll message you because I might be doing something tomorrow. So I'll message you about that. But thanks very much. And have a good evening. And we know there's going to be more. This isn't going to end, is it?
No, it's never going to end.
No. So, brilliant, mate. Take care, and thanks very much. Cheers, Bel. Thanks very much there to Steve, aka Elm. The buggers. They don't. I'll get them. I'll get them joining with my sense of humour again. So Whelan's gone. Rudkin next. It looks like Rudkin is knocking everybody off. And he will be left just with him at the top of the tree. But I hope not. Look, for me, for me, Susan Whelan hasn't got everything right. There was the lateness in sending off the accounts, which is one of the reasons why we haven't yet heard about the PSR. And I was talking, like I say, Kieran Maguire, the football money expert. And unfortunately, guys, everything that happened in the summer does not affect the PSR that is being looked at. So, all that hard work, it will affect next year's, but unfortunately, it doesn't have anything to do with the ones that we're currently in trouble with. But at least they can see that we're trying to do something. We're going to be back at 7 o'clock. It might be early. Why not click notifications, and whatever time it comes out, you know that you won't miss it. Please like the video, share it if you know anybody that's a Leicester fan that doesn't watch it, and subscribe. And if you're listening via your favourite podcast platform, as I always say, thank you very much indeed. I'll see you later. Take care now, and let's get those predictions ready. See you in a bit.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.